Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? 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 We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos and aquariums, conservation, general animal weirdness, all that good stuff. Y'all, I have a fun story for you, but before I get to that, I did want to take a moment to remind y'all that this is a crowdsourced zoo news program. So if you happen to see any stories that you think would fit the bill, please send them to me. You can tag me in them on the socials at Rossifari, which of course you should be following, on TikTok at RossifariPod, or you can email them to me, rossifaripod@gmail.com. And of course, make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review and all those cool things that y'all are sick of hearing me say. But yeah, so, okay, cute story. I spent the last couple days with my son, Miles. And Zoe was there for part of it as well, which was really fun. And so we went to Red Robin for lunch one day. And I am not a huge goer to chain restaurants, but Red Robin has some decent stuff. Plus, they're named after an animal, so that's cool. And we were seated in the bar area, which meant that we could see the television that was behind the bar. And instead of playing, normal like TV or, sports ball or whatever, they had one of those kind of streaming channels of just like video that you can watch. I don't know if you've seen that, but some restaurants do that and coffee shops and stuff. Anyway, and this one was called Paws TV, like PAWS. And as you can imagine, there were a lot of cute animal things. And when we sat down and kind of clocked it, there were a bunch of different puppy things happening on the TV. And it was very cute. So our waitress came over to us, and it was pretty obvious that this young lady was, let's say, shy, very shy, very quiet, very not not like me and Miles in terms of volume. And so she came over and she was like, "Hey, can I get you something to drink?" And so we ordered our drinks. And she came back and she was like, "Here are your drinks. Are you ready for, what you want? Do you know what you want?" And we were like, "Yeah, I think we're ready." And I was like, "Okay, Miles, go ahead." And Miles looked down and he was like, "So I'll take." And at that moment, Paws TV switched to some zoo animals. In particular, they switched to red pandas. And so Miles goes, "Yeah, I'll take red panda, Dad, red panda, red panda, red panda," pointing and yelling at the top of his lungs at the television, which is directly behind the waitress, meaning that from the waitress's perspective, Miles was just pointing directly at her and screaming at the top of his lungs. And my mother, myself, my son, those lungs, they have a very high top. We'll put it that way. And he was just screaming, "Red panda, red panda, red panda," which, like, fair. I thought our waitress was going to have a heart attack. Her eyes got so big and she jumped backwards and she had no clue what was going on. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." We got excited because there was a red panda on the TV, and Mouse was like, "They're our favorite animal. We love them." And I was like, Yep. All right, let's all calm down. The waitress was just like, "Oh, it's okay. I totally understand. Everything's fine." And I was like, okay, ma'am, you need to like outside voice at some point here. This is your job. But hey, whatever. It all worked out in the end. I was just super, super entertained by that. And I was like, this is kind of the most Rossifari thing that has ever happened at a red robin, for sure. But yeah, and so that was my fun story. But speaking of red pandas, I actually do have a brief correction from last week. So in mentioning that Sakura, the red panda at the Toronto Zoo, had given birth, I said she had not bred successfully before. And I'm not sure exactly what source I was looking at, but apparently I misunderstood what I had read on the topic, because it turns out that she has been a successful mom many times with a total of 7 cubs in the past. That's not counting the 2 now. I'm not really sure how that math works out, but 7 plus 2, whatever that is. That's how many she's had. So by she has not bred successfully before, I mean she has pushed kids out more seasons than not. I think what I read, I went and tried to find my old source and stuff, and I think that maybe she had just not been successful in breeding with her partner Arun during the most recent breeding season, and so maybe they thought she was like past that, because obviously she was very successful in the seasons before that. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly if the wording was vague, or if I misunderstood, or if I was too distracted by my child yelling "Red panda, red panda, red panda" for me to properly read the article. But apparently I did misunderstand that, and I did want to clear that up. Not a big deal, but I did want to share. It actually gives me more hope for the twins at Toronto this, birthing season, since their mom is such a wonderful veteran of the whole panda mothering thing. So yay for that. And with all that said, it is time for
1, 2, 3, 4.
Ow, that's a funky monkey, tree kangaroo, or a binturong. It's zoo news, yeah. All right, so we're going to start off with our headline story, and it's a shorter one, less of a deep dive and more of a shallow dive, but I found it kind of interesting. So an article recently came out looking at sound enrichment for animals at zoos, and it's got a really interesting case study that I wanted to share with y'all. So if you've ever been to the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, then you know that Samson is the person who greets you when you first walk in. And by person in this case, I mean a beautiful blue hyacinth macaw. Well, it turns out that Samson is actually much more than just an awesome ambassador animal for his species and for the safari park. He's also a DJ. And this is the kind of project that gives choice and control that I just can't get enough of. So how this works is Samson likes to dance, as many hyacinth macaws do. And the zoo has given Samson control of his own boombox, which he can control by biting or holding onto a joystick that is made to look like a slice of log. Motion sensors keep the music going as long as he is bobbing or nodding along, meaning he doesn't have to hold on to it the whole time. And then, he can dance to his heart's content. And when he stops dancing, he has learned that the music will turn off. So not only does this give Samson a choice about whether he wants music and wants to dance, but it also gives him some control over how many people are standing at his exhibit. Because not surprisingly, whenever Samson rocks out to some Daft Punk and starts dancing, people crowd around. But then when he stops, the crowds disperse and head into the main area of the park. So it's interesting in that he gets some control both over the music and over the crowds watching him, which I found fascinating. The system in question is called Joy Branch, which is a great name, as it is a branch that gives him joy. And it's just one of many sound projects that the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance is testing out at their facilities. The project was led by a scientist named Rebecca Kleinberger, a digital technology cognition and sound researcher trained in MIT's Media Lab. Now, right now, it seems like about a third of the zoos in the country are doing some kind of aural enrichment or research into the idea, which is a good start. But it's probably a number that should go up, especially given the fact that so many animals are so focused on the sounds around them. Of course, sounds can actually be a really tricky thing when it comes to animals that were born in human care. One of the things Kleinberger is looking into is how to minimize any potential stresses of prey animals when they hear predator calls at the zoo. Think of what a gazelle might feel when hearing a lion roar just a few exhibits away. And to me, this is a really interesting thought because we are still figuring out what fears and triggers are instinctual and which ones are learned when, like, babies out in the wild. For instance, I have heard from a few different facilities that looked into housing predators and prey animals close to each other by testing, big shocker here, red pandas for a natural fear response to snow leopards, one of the predators they can encounter in their natural range. Over time, red pandas in zoos were presented with enrichment items, including snow leopard fur and urine, and their reactions were observed and recorded. And honestly, the pandas didn't care at all, not even a little bit. Without having an actual scary snow leopard to associate those smells with, the pandas faced evidence of one of their fiercest potential predators with a hearty shrug. As a matter of fact, the red pandas at the Buffalo Zoo live very close to multiple snow leopard exhibits, but don't show any stress related to that proximity. Now, while these are not sounds that I'm talking about, the same idea stands. If you never learn that a lion's roar means possible predation, are you going to react to it with fear? The answer may be different for every animal, every species, and frankly, every sound. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about the idea of sonic enrichment, and I think ideas like Joy Branch are absolutely incredible. I think it becomes very important for people working on these projects to not dive into assumptions about what animals born in human care might feel about certain sounds based on their wild counterparts. But, with proper research, I think this area of study can have a huge impact on the welfare of animals in zoos and aquariums. And I just, I love that so much. I find the whole thing very fascinating. And that brings us to our births for the week. And we have a lot of births to get to this week, which we are going to start with the section I call births, because there has been a whole lot of hatching going on. Zoo Atlanta has announced the birth of a western gray plantain eater chick. This is the first one to ever hatch at the zoo after a concentrated effort to breed the species at the zoo that started back in 2018. So this is a huge win for the bird team there. And that's not all, as Zoo Atlanta has also announced the hatching of 3 Guira cuckoo chicks and also 2 clutches of superb starling chicks that have hatched and fledged at the zoo already. So they're actually on exhibit, which is really exciting. The Dallas Zoo is flying into our birds section with the announcement of 2 whooping crane chicks. The eggs were actually sent to the zoo from the International Crane Foundation and are being raised by foster parents Huckleberry and Juniper, who are experienced fosters and are doing a great job. And actually, before we leave Dallas, the zoo has also announced the birth of 2 lesser flamingo chicks. Now, scientists assume there were 2 chicks born because the lesser flamingo population is trying to stop being lesser, so they want to have more of them. No? Hello? Anyone? Anyway, Dingle Aquarium is also dropping a new chick. Not like literally, but like how episodes of this podcast drop. And it's good they aren't dropping it literally because it can't fly, because it is a Gentoo penguin. This is actually the first Gentoo penguin chick to hatch at Dingle Aquarium in a decade. So just a really extra exciting bird. The Virginia Zoo has announced the first ever bird of a tawny frogmouth in the zoo's history. Now, when first hatched, tawny frogmouths literally look like a cotton ball with a tiny beak. The zoo has posted a picture of the bird at this stage, and it is well worth the look on Instagram or Facebook at Virginia Zoo. And then last but not least in this section, miso. Not that one. Red pandas aren't birds. And tofu Not that one. Vegetarian protein sources aren't birds, even though some of them apparently taste like them. I don't know. Anyway, but Miso and Tofu are two trumpeter swans who live at Blank Park Zoo, and they have welcomed two babies to the world. Now, while I like calling these swanlets, the correct name for baby swans is cygnets. And these two cygnets have names that are befitting their parents, Kelp and Ramen. And then that brings us to the rest of our births, which we continue panda birthing season with the birth of twin red panda cubs at the Detroit Zoo. Now, these little balls of floof were born to mom Ginger, a first-time mom, and dad Ravi. Ginger is doing a great job, especially as a first-time mom, which is, always exciting to hear. The pedestrian rope bridge over the habitat, which is a really cool feature, by the way. It's worth a trip for y'all to check out sometime if you haven't yet. But that bridge has been closed for the next few months to keep mom feeling extra safe. But Ravi is out on exhibit and being his normal, adorable self. So congrats to the team at the Detroit Zoo. The Toronto Zoo has announced the birth of a Przewalski's horse, also known as a Mongolian wild horse. And of course, it's a baby horse, so it's a horselet or a foal. All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
Hi, this is Kathy Hill from the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. We're all about restoration projects in progress this season on One Lagoon, One Voice. Learn about the great strides the lagoon community is taking to restore and protect the Indian River Lagoon. Each week, we dive deep into discussions with scientists, resource managers, and nonprofit leaders to explore lagoon issues and solutions. From oyster reefs to clam restoration, algae blooms to muck, you'll learn all about the projects we're tackling to bring the Indian River Lagoon back to health. Click the link in the show notes to follow One Lagoon, One Voice, learn about the IRL Council, and explore our unique lagoon.
And even though Przewalski's horses are a huge conservation success story, it's still important to bolster their numbers as much as possible. And as such, every birth is a really big deal. Paradise Wildlife Park has announced the birth of a capybara pup, or caplet. I said that weird. It's capybara. Capybara? Capybara. Capybara? Anyway, caplet. Cute. Baby. It's capybara. Point Defiance Zoo has announced the birth of the first ever sea lion pup born at the zoo. The pup is currently 17 pounds and is bonding behind the scenes with mom Eloise. Whipsnade Zoo has announced the birth of a female reticulated giraffe to mother Ijuma. 2 ringtail kits, or ringlets, have been born at the Phoenix Zoo. This is the second year in a row that 2 have been born there, and they are currently doing well, living their best lives behind the scenes. The Australian Reptile Park has announced that koala birthing season is upon us, and the first one to show his adorable little fuzzball of a head is named Pedro. Pedro is super adorable and is becoming more adventurous by the day, so if you happen to be able to visit Australian Reptile Park, you are in for a treat. Our friends at ABQ Biopark have announced the birth of a western lowland gorilla. Mom Nia Lua is doing well and is being very attentive, and the entire troop is helping to raise the baby, as gorillas often do. It is very cool to see that kind of thing at a zoo, so if you decide to head to Albuquerque, make sure you check it out. And then we get to a story that hits this section and the next one, and these are always really hard. But the Nashville Zoo had a challenging situation this week as they announced the birth of a red river hog piglet named Tot to Mother Tater. Unfortunately, Tot wasn't doing well right from the start as she refused to nurse from her mom. Because of this, she was moved to the nursery at the veterinary hospital, and it was decided she would be hand-reared with the hopes of becoming an ambassador animal. Thanks to the incredible transparency of the Nashville Zoo, guests were briefly able to see Tot through the nursery windows at the vet hospital as she started to take to her treatment. But sadly, it was soon announced that she would not be visible at the windows, and then they announced another announcement, and this time it was that she had passed. And it turns out she had an illness that made her feel just icky from the start, and she ended up being unresponsive to efforts to save her. A necropsy will hopefully let the team know exactly what illness she had and exactly what caused these issues. And hopefully that information may help save some other piglets that find themselves in the same situation. So sending all the love to the team at the Nashville Zoo. And actually, another young animal passed away this week that I want to mention here as we start our deaths section. Woodland Park Zoo has announced the loss of Trout, the male river otter pup, recently born at the zoo. Trout was exploring his holding area, which includes ramps and other enrichment, when he got wedged between a ramp and a platform and died despite the best efforts of the animal care team and animal health teams to resuscitate him. This is such a sad loss, and I feel terrible for the team. The ramp and platform in question have been used for years by numerous otters, both adult and juvenile, and there have never been any issues with it before, so it appears as though this accident is truly a fluke. Of course, the space is still being modified and reassessed to make sure nothing like this happens again, but sending all the love to this team suffering this tragic loss. Colchester Zoo has announced the passing of An-An, a 14-year-old male red panda. An-An was the father to 5 panda cubs who have all gone to other zoos and had families of their own. An-An not only leaves behind that legacy, but the incredible memories he gave to his keepers, many of whom saw him as one of their heart animals. He will be deeply missed. Mayaka Elephant Ranch has announced the passing of Carol, a beautiful elephant who was 52 years old at the time of her passing. Carol was a guest favorite, inspiring countless people to fall more deeply in love with elephants. The Minnesota Zoo has said goodbye to Nikita, a Burmese python. Nikita was 29 years old, making her one of the oldest Burmese pythons in human care at the time of her passing. It would often take up to 7 staff members to hold Nikita for exams and such, and I'm sure she left an indelible mark on all of them. And last but not least in this section, Jenkinson Aquarium has announced the death of the saddleback tamarin that lived at the zoo, who was named Stinky. The death comes due to age-related health complications, which makes sense since the average lifespan for the species is 8 to 13 years, and Stinky was around 22 years old at the time of his passing. Now, they don't know the exact age because Stinky was actually a wild-born animal that was taken from the wild, brought into the country illegally, and confiscated all before he was 1 year old. He was turned over to the aquarium where he was hand-raised and lived an incredible and long life. And I love this story so much because it goes from just the worst situation possible for Stinky to such a good situation and such a long life. And it happened so quickly. It's so cool that he was rescued and got this amazing life. Just the best. Love it. I also, of course, love it because, his name was Stinky, and that's pretty great. So then moving on from births and deaths, we get to the rest of our zoo news section. And let's see here. We said it was a possibility that the panda bears would be arriving at the San Diego Zoo soon, and it turns out we were correct. The San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance sent some of their higher-ups over to China recently to participate in a farewell ceremony for the 2 bears that will be traveling to the San Diego Zoo, meaning that their move is truly close at hand. Now, once the bears arrive in San Diego, they will go through a quarantine and adjustment period before they are made available to be viewed by the general public. So, don't go booking flights tomorrow. I mean, do. The San Diego Zoo is incredible, but don't do so expecting to see giant pandas right away. But yeah, they are going to be on their way very soon, and that is very exciting news. I always say this. I love it when zoos collaborate for the sake of 1 or 2 animals. And this is another one of those stories. Wildlife Safari recently saw the birth of twin cheetah cubs to mom Zori, who is the number 1 genetically valued female cheetah in all of North America. Unfortunately, one of the cubs didn't survive, and Zuri did the thing cheetah moms do in that situation. She stopped producing milk. This is a survival strategy in which cheetah moms allow single cubs to die off so their bodies quickly get ready to reproduce again in the hopes of having a larger litter. Well, it just so happens that a cheetah at the Cincinnati Zoo gave birth the day after Zuri did, and that both cubs were thriving. As such, the decision was made to whisk the new cub away to Cincinnati to join the litter there as a foster sibling. The cub was flown by an organization called Lighthawk Conservation Flying and was quickly accepted into his new family at the Cincinnati Zoo, where he is absolutely thriving with his adopted siblings. Love that so much. And actually, that's not the only rescue story that's kind of crazy this week. 2 beluga whales have been rescued from an aquarium in Ukraine and taken to a facility in Valencia, Spain, because of the ongoing war in Ukraine. The transport was obviously incredibly challenging, and the team that did it involved partners from Oceanographic de Valencia, the Georgia Aquarium, and SeaWorld. The rescue involved a 12-hour drive over rough roads and raising temperatures in an active war zone before the pair were able to board a 6-hour chartered flight to their new home. During this harrowing journey, they had to pass through multiple international borders and deal with all of that red tape as well. But given that bombing has been occurring very close to the aquarium, even all of those challenges were deemed worth dealing with to save these 2 animals. The pair arrived at their new home in fair condition, and they are getting special treatment, including special treatment to help them deal with the trauma of the move, which I think is really, really cool. But yeah, and then they'll be settling into their new homes. And throwing it back to the Cincinnati Zoo for a second, they have partnered with Cincinnati State's Interpreter Training Program to provide American Sign Language interpreters for some of the zoo's animal encounter programs this summer. So on June 29th, July 27th, August 31st, and September 28th, ASL interpreters will be at encounters, including the Cheetah Encounter, Wings of Wonder Bird Demonstration, and Blakely's Barnyard Bonanza. The St. Louis Zoo recently became the only zoo in the United States to have Guatemalan jumping vipers in their care. All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
What if I told you scientists discovered 100 new species in the deep ocean?
Why did crocodiles survive extinction?
Megalodon. How did it go extinct?
Hey, it's me, Forrest Galante, wildlife biologist. You might know me from Joe Rogan's podcast or my various TV shows like Extinct or Alive and Shark Week. Join me and my friends as we dive into the wild world of animal anomalies and everything wildlife. Don't miss out. Click here to uncover these mind-blowing animal mysteries.
These snakes were a gift from La Aurora Zoo, or as they call it in Guatemala, El Parque Zoológico Nacional La Aurora. Which again is in Guatemala, which is really cool, and also where these jumping vipers are from. In my opinion, they will be joining one of the most impressive herp houses in the entire country. I love that place. The St. Louis Zoo, it's such a cool herp house. All right, so this next story goes in a very different direction. So about 25 miles west of Paris sits a zoo and safari park known as Thory Zoo. They offer many unique experiences, including a safari-style lodge you can stay at overnight, which, according to the advertisement by the zoo, offers a, quote, one-of-a-kind, very intimate experience with the Arctic wolves you'll be able to see from the living room. Wow. Unfortunately, one of these experiences became a little too intimate for a guest who is now fighting for her life after being attacked by 3 wolves. The woman in question went for an early morning jog after spending the night at the lodge and ended up in the safari zone where the wolves attacked her, probably to defend their territory. According to the woman's family, there was improper signage and she didn't realize she had wandered into a restricted area. According to the zoo, she would have had to pass through security systems, a trench, and an electric fence in order to reach the area she was attacked in. So police are investigating in the hopes of getting to the bottom of what actually happened, but the woman is still fighting for her life after being bitten on the neck, the calf, and the back. And actually, the bit of good news from all of this is all of the wolves survived the encounter without injury, and they didn't have to get shot or anything because someone was on their exhibit. So, silver linings, I suppose. And because I refuse to end this segment on that note, the Denver Zoo has officially been renamed the Denver Zoo Conservation Alliance in order to reflect its purpose to continue to deliver exceptional experiences on its 80-acre campus while reaffirming its commitment to wildlife conservation in Colorado and worldwide. It's a really exciting time for the Denver Zoo. They've been really focusing in on conservation and leading up to this big announcement, and they have a new logo to go with it and everything. And yeah, good times for the Denver Zoo. Big fan. Love it there. Very cool. Very cool.
Stereotypical animal podcast theme song. Here to bring you to conservation news.
The Care for Wild Rhino Sanctuary in South Africa recently had a particularly adorable story take place. Rangers in Kruger National Park discovered a zebra foal wandering alone during the rainy season. Given that it was pouring out at the time, rangers named the baby Mojadi, which is after the goddess of rain, I believe. And then a few days later, rangers came across an orphaned white rhino who they named Daisy. Since they were both young orphans, staff actually put the two in the same stall so they could comfort each other as their mothers would have. And the two truly became best friends. They cuddled together, they slept together, they were basically inseparable at their time at the reserve. It was really adorable. Now, zebras grow up pretty quickly, so Mojadi is already back out in the wild, while Daisy is still getting care at the sanctuary. But observers have noticed the now wild zebra likes to hang out close to rhinos. It's something that isn't super common for the species. The staff at the park are curious to see if Daisy and Mojadi will restart their friendship when Daisy joins her BFF back out in the wild. And I love this story, not just because it is adorable, and let's be clear, it's freaking adorable, but also because it shows how innovative and quick thinking conservationists have to be in the field. When you have two baby animals that need around-the-clock care and love and attention and comfort, and you don't have a bunch of humans to provide it or any of their own species around to provide it, you improvise and you do the best you can. And sometimes you spark an adorable friendship. It's just a great story. Speaking of good news, new numbers have come out for the Iberian lynx population, and they are really good. The species was on the brink of extinction 2 decades ago, but a population increase of almost 86% since then has led the species to be classified as vulnerable now, upgraded from endangered. What an amazing recovery. Gray whales in the Pacific Northwest have been shrinking in recent decades, according to a new study. Whales born after the year 2000 are, on average, 5 feet 4 inches shorter than whales born before Y2K. This has been affecting female whales more than male whales, creating an interesting situation. Traditionally, there has been some sexual dimorphism when it comes to the size of these whales, with females being larger than the males. But now members of both sexes are growing to be around the exact same size. From research done, scientists have learned that the length differences are not inherited, which suggests an environmental cause for the change. But as of yet, no one is sure what exact environmental factor is causing this change. But it's a really interesting trend to see, especially for a species for which size has always been a major advantage. So this is an evolutionary quandary, y'all. And then last but not least in this section, it is now officially illegal to intentionally release balloons into the sky in the state of Florida. Obviously, this is a huge win for marine ecosystems in the state because turtles, birds, and other marine animals suffer and die when those balloons that float away so beautifully when released end up back on the ground and find their way into waterways. This is another great example of a conservation win in a state where many people would assume that there wouldn't be many of those based on the political makeup of the state. But it's something that gives me a lot of hope. Florida conservation laws give me a lot of hope in a very politically divided and tumultuous time. And I like that. In other news, a video captured the first ever recorded evidence that terrestrial leeches are able to jump. Now, don't worry, this is a leech that lives in Madagascar, so most of you won't be confronting it day to day. But it is always so fascinating how much we are constantly learning about the animals of the world. Who knew leeches could jump? Apparently no one, because, this is news now. Leapin leeches, y'all. And last but not least, in our news section, a new study from Colorado State University seems to confirm that wild African elephants address each other with calls that are unique and tailored to the individual, which is my fancy non-anthropomorphizing way of saying that it appears that elephants call each other by name just like humans do, which is awesome and adorable. The study showed that individual elephants would respond to calls with their, we're going to call them their names in them, far more readily and with much more interest than other elephants that were also in hearing range of the call, but that didn't share the same name. Now, this is something that has been suspected for a while now, but is just now finally confirmed. Elephants have names for each other. And it makes me wonder, my mind goes right to, well, if they have names, do they have nicknames? Or oh man, do they drop insults and stuff? Do they make funny pun names out of their names? Or is that a human thing? The mean names you're calling me for ruining this adorable story by wondering if elephants bully each other like humans do. But hey, no, elephant names. Very cool, very cute, happy way to end this segment. Yay!
Animal, animal, animal holidays. Animal, animal, animal holidays.
Now, as I mentioned last week, the last few days of June are devoid of any animal holidays, though it does wrap up Zoo and Aquarium Month, World Oceans Month, and Orca Month. And then that moves us into July, which is Plastic Free July, National Bison Month, Parks and Recreation Month, and Wild About Wildlife Month. Then for our individual days, we have July 1st, which is International Polycate Day, July 2nd, which is World Porcupine Day, and July 3rd is World Meerkat Day. And those are your animal holidays for the week. So there you have it. Another episode of Rossifari Zoo News is done. I would like to remind you all that you can support the podcast for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. And I'd like to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, and Jenny Owens. I'd also like to thank everyone who contributed this week, and there are a lot of you, y'all. This happens sometimes. It seems like most weeks I either get the same usual 15, 16 people, or then there are weeks where people come out of the woodwork, the people who send one story every couple months, or friends who don't do much with the podcast at all, but see something that they know I would relate to or be excited about and send it on in for Zoo News. And this was one of those weeks. And I always find it so interesting, the kind of ebb and flow, but boy, I like those flow weeks. So I'd like to say thank you for their contributions to Anya Keene, Colleen Lenahan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbuck, Miles Rossi, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky, the Malenskys. And I do have to say, I gave Kay some crap for not getting her story in last week, but she actually did. It was just after I had recorded, so she's off the hook. So y'all can stop being mean to her on... No, I'm kidding. No one's doing that. I know. Anyway, moving on. Also would like to say thank you to Holly Page, Jay Meredith, Dr. Laura Shank, Jesse Nicole, Lynn Vesley Gross, Sam Evans, Ann Yoshioka, Nikki Morley, Dr. Zoe Rossi, Anna McEachran, Matthew Dudek, Lizard Dunlevy, Barbara Bennett, Susan Shank, Crystal Chapman, and Taylor Isaac Gray. And hey, don't forget to bring it back here on Tuesday for another interview episode, and then we'll be back on Friday for another episode of Zoo News. But until then, remember, friends, the words Newsy Credits backwards are Steiderk Yiswen. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo. All right, so there you have it. Another sode of what?